Welcome to another episode of Heated Conversations. I am your host, Peterson Pierre. We have on the podcast today, Byron Knox. Welcome to the podcast, Byron. How are you?
Oh, good. Great. Thanks for having me and Happy New Year.
Yes, Happy New Year to you. As I had mentioned, it's the beginning of the 2024 season. How has prep been going, especially after the holiday break to start your competition season?
Well, I would say that for us, it's actually going very well. When the athletes do take a break and we have to return after a week and a half or more off, there's some growing pains because now we have to come back and hit the ground running. So it's a little different prep after a break, um, more so than coming back, let's say, from the summer
Yeah,
or having a week off.
no, absolutely. And kind of talking about, the having the holiday time and having those times off. I have a couple other questions that I want to ask you. And these are kind of just introduction questions that really don't have anything to do with what we'll be discussing, but it also has everything to do with what we will be what we will be discussing in regards to people and our relationships with people and things that connect us as people. The first question is, if you could have anybody in the world cook you any meal, who would you have cook you that meal and what would you request of that person to make you?
Okay, well, I'm fortunate enough that, that person is my wife and she's a great cook. So she can whip up several meals that I like, in particular. And the families have their favorites, but I would say, her traditional mac and cheese, you know, collard greens, and all the fixing. So Thanksgiving is a good time for us. And there are several other meals that she makes that are actually really good. She makes a kale soup that's like unbelievable. So, we can eat that like all week long,
Yeah,
if we're choice. So yeah, so I'm fortunate. I have that at my beck and call, like, now.
right. And it's awesome that you're able to share that, especially with your wife, who is a good cook. And a lot of moms and a lot of wives are good cooks, or even a lot of husbands, a lot of dads are great cooks. And it's something special to be able to have that time. And can you kind of talk about what those meals do for your family and spending time with your wife, or even just watching her make these meals? And what does that do for you?
Well, I don't watch her make the meals, but I will sample and I'll taste anything she puts out there. But what it does is it actually brings us all together as a family. Everybody has their favorite, and it's really hard to go wrong in our home. But it does all bring us together. And there's that common bond that we have as a family when we're eating a meal together.
And I like how you said, go ahead.
And there are no phones. It's even better.
I love that. And I love how you said common bonds are, and because the thing is, especially with season, you're bringing all these athletes together from different places for a common goal, right? And food is something that is able to do that. And a lot of times we call our teams our family. So it's cool that for you personally, that's something that you live out both in the gym, but also at home where you're able to spend time. And with now having technology so easy for us to access and having that time where you're really able to spend that with your family, I think is really important. Which leads me to my second question. Another thing I think pairs up great with food is usually music. And so my second question is, if you could go see anyone live in concert, dead or alive, who would you go see and who would you take to go see that concert with you?
That's tough, but I'm going to try to simplify it. And I'm going to say I would like to see a 60s/70s review of either Temptations, Motown, old school. Growing up in the 60s, that's what my ear was, tuned to. And anything that's the evolution of soul music/music in particular. And I would take my family because my kids hear me all the time talk about this stuff. I'd like them to see what excites me.
Yeah. And music is something that is really exciting, especially in our sport with floor routines and even at a competition, having music in between and having beam songs for some dual meets and stuff like that. But how you also brought it back to your family and sharing times that they weren't around for, at least your kids weren't around for, and to be able to experience some of these groups like the Temptations that you're talking about and really understand soul of music and soul of the music that they were making at the time. What are some ways that you are able to bring that to your kids now? Is that something where you still have records that you play around them in the house, or have you found other places for you to be able to play or have similar music that you play around the house?
Well, I don't have, well, I do actually have records. So most of those records are from the 70s, and that was during my hip hop days. Fortunately for me, I grew up in Harlem and then moved to the Bronx, and that's where the birth of hip hop was. And it just happened to have been in my neighborhood. So, I still have turntables, I still have a mixer. None of that stuff works anymore, but I keep it as memorabilia.
Yeah.
But I still have all the albums. So they we go on YouTube, and I'll play a song and every now and then, and any new song that comes out that has a beat or a melody that they like, I can easily refer to as that's a remix. The original was A, B, and C. So I sort of date myself, but at the same time, that's me.
Yeah. And I'm much younger than you. And that's one thing that actually frustrates me, sort of, is when the songs that I grew up with, like in the 90s or in the early 2000s, and they're being remixed now, but they're not the song that I knew. As soon as I hear the intro, I'm like, oh, it's about to be this song. And then it's not. And it's kind of frustrating just because you know the original, but at
Right.
the same time, you can also see how people can use that and be creative and also bring homage to who originally produced or who originally created that music. And I think that's what we do a lot of times in life, right? In our sport, we put our own spin on things that were probably done before, but we also try to create things that haven't been done before that the world hasn't seen. And that's a really unique thing about sport, gymnastics in particular, but even in life is able to do that. Can you kind of talk about how you use those parallels in your coaching?
Oh, well, yeah, absolutely. Being involved in gymnastics in the 70s, I had an opportunity to be around women's gymnastics in particular, when the uneven bars were like really close, when the beams weren't, spring beams, and you had to vault over the horse sideways. Coaching that level of gymnastics and then having it evolve to where it is today gives me this broad spectrum of creativity. So I've created new skills in the sport, for my athletes, just based on knowing the history. What's old is new. And I can name multiple skills that they're doing now that I can honestly say that it was done for the first time in my gym. But back then, you'd have to be in the World Championships or the Olympic Games to have things named after you. I can name off a handful of skills, and people would go, "Oh, wait a minute, that's a so and so." Like, now that's not. Now you know what that is? That's really like a Byron Knox, is what it is. So, uh, but having that base kind of gives me maybe a little more creativity than the average coach.
And can we go down your coaching journey? When did coaching start for you? And let's go even further back. When did the sport of gymnastics kind of get introduced into your life?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I started gymnastics my second year in high school. Actually, it was my freshman year. It was a gym class. I went to an all-boys school, DeWitt Clinton High School in the Bronx. We had 7,200 students in school, and every freshman had to go through either gym class. And my president at the time, my high school coach was the dean of students, freshmen. So he made sure that every freshman class went through a gymnastics, sort of like gymnastics class. So that was my first introduction. No real interest. I was tall. I started late. So by my sophomore year, I decided, I'm going to try out for the team. Made the team. It was, I would say, the best thing for me because being in that environment in the Bronx with gangs and violence and all that stuff took place, having an opportunity to have that guidance with discipline was probably just what I needed. And then from there, I went on to Southern Connecticut State College at the time and joined the team there. A few of my teammates that were a year ahead of me went there. We've actually turned down scholarships from various schools to all attend the same school. Came to Southern and helped Southern win multiple conference championships. And being a Division II school, we actually competed against some of the bigger schools. Finished third twice, third in 76 and 77, and fifth, 78 and 79. So that was my journey in terms of an athlete. Made the national team. And being 6'2" and starting so late, that was like an anomaly. But we came from a strong program here with Coach Abe Grossfeld, who's had some of the best tumblers in the world, the Olympic medalists. So being in that environment is what cultivated my gymnastics. I didn't set out to make the national team. I think that I was a product of the program with Abe.
And when did it become where you started to coach the sport of gymnastics?
I started to coach the sport after a devastating family event. I was a student here at the university. I just graduated. And during the summer of 82, a few weeks after making the national team, my youngest brother was a victim of a violent crime in New York. So that derailed me. So he lost his life and I just wasn't focused. And then I just thought, listen, I need money. So I took a job at a gym school, not knowing anything about women's gymnastics. As a matter of fact, I didn't like it at all because it was moving too slow. The skill wasn't. I mean, here I'm on the national team and I'm coaching little kids who I knew nothing about in terms of little girls, how to get them to tumble and do bars, and so it was a different dynamic for me. But I do remember after my first competition with the little kids, I thought, if I train these kids the way I train, they're going to be good. So then I set off that was my path in coaching. Opened up a gym school, and then came to Connecticut went to Rhode Island, opened a gym school, came to Connecticut and opened a gym school, and then made it our mission to put out like some of the best gymnastics in the country. And had kids on the national team, became a national team coach, tops coordinator, regional elite director. So I became heavily entrenched in the sport by way of coaching. And then that led me to doing international stuff with USA Gymnastics as well.
And you had mentioned
that women's side.
And you had mentioned that you didn't like really women's gymnastics just because of how it progressed, but then you also said that you started to train them the way that you train. Can you talk about the way that you trained? And then was that the thing that really kept you in it with the women's side to continue it and have the tenure that you currently do?
Well, exactly. Because I started late. I mean, I went into college, I had a full twist on floor. And this is before spring floors. I thought it was good until I got there. And we had Peter Corman, the current Olympic bronze medalist. We had other guys on the national team. So that became my motivation. As a matter of fact, my roommate, his name was Wally Miller. He was on the national team. He got an assignment at the USA China. So before going on that trip, USA Gymnastics sent this gigantic box of apparel to the gym. He opened the box and it was all the latest USA gear that you couldn't even buy. That became my motivation. I wanted that box. So it wasn't making the national team. It was like, I need to get that box. And in order to get the box, obviously, you got to be on the team. So that became my mission. I took that same sort of philosophy to the gym with the girls. So starting as late as I did, and being one of those athletes that didn't have the normal, or at least the ideal body type for gymnastics, um, I then converted that same philosophy to coaching the women. I learned all of what I learned based on when I got to college, not so much what I had going into college, which is different nowadays. Most coaches recruit things that they need, the help that they need, and they're not always looking at potential because potential hasn't happened yet. So they can only see what's in front of them. Hey, I need a vaulter. You can do bars. I'm doing the opposite. I'm trying to develop those kids. So I've done that at the club level and had, lots of success there. Being one of the top, I'd say top 12 clubs in the country. USA Gymnastics then had a way to rank clubs. If you won the national club championship, if you had so many kids on the national team, if they've won a medal. So I think I might have been ranked sixth, but I know we're in the top 10 somewhere. And that was all based on just that hard work ethic that we instilled in a program called CATS way back in the 80s.
And what did CATS stand for?
Cheshire Acrobatic Training School.
And what?
And it was a high school buddy of mine and we sort of opened this up. So we came from that same cloth of that DeWitt Clinton High School in New York.
And would you consider, because I guess younger coaches like myself would consider the time when you started to coach like old school, right? And kind of we talk about old school versus current times of coaching and even in how to appropriately coach. Do you feel like your style of coaching has evolved as time has evolved, or were you able to take the same way that you coach and make it where it would fit for the times and to be a environment where it was a joy for the athletes to be at?
Well, you got to understand, way back then, the best in the world were the Soviets and the Eastern Bloc countries. And, I wouldn't even say China. China started to evolve in the late 70s, early 80s. So before that, everything was, discipline, discipline, discipline. You see some of the Eastern Bloc countries on TV and there was no smiling, no joy, just, almost robotic. Their motivation was different in that, they did well in sports, then that meant a better lifestyle. So for us, it was more of the joy of the sport and trying to get kids, or at least athletes, to reach a high level. My style has changed. It has evolved because I have to adapt to, present day society. But back then, it was a little bit different. You can be a little more strict because we didn't have all the safety parameters in place. So that strictness was important. You had to be disciplined because you can get hurt doing gymnastics. Nowadays, with the vaulting table being what it is, and just about every gym has some sort of like foam pit and soft landings, you can try just about anything. You can try it first and then learn it after. Whereas before, it had to have been the progressions of learning because you had to be proficient because of the dangers of the sport. So yes, it has changed quite a bit.
And did you have mentors that really were significant to you on your journey then and even today?
Oh, absolutely. I'm fortunate to have had in men's gymnastics, I consider the best coach, in the country, which was Abe Grossfeld, to learn men's gymnastics. And I've also had the opportunity to work alongside his former wife, Muriel Grossfeld, who was an outstanding athlete herself, Olympian / national team coach, Olympic coach. So learning both men's gymnastics from Abe and then from Muriel sort of puts me right in the middle. And that actually happened right here in New Haven, Connecticut. So absolutely. And unfortunately, Muriel passed. Abe is 90. He'll be 90 this year. He's still in the gym. As a matter of fact, when I took the position, Well, prior to taking the position, I was Abe's assistant coach in 2000, between 2000 and 2004 before they dropped the program. So I asked Abe, do you mind? You want to be my assistant? He says, well, I'll come in the gym, but don't expect me every day. And I help give hints. Well, Abe's in the gym every day, like literally every day. And we love it. So I'm fortunate enough to have that. And I've also had a high school coach that was extremely instrumental in putting myself and a few other guys on the right path of, being disciplined and understanding the sport of gymnastics. And his name was John Trietta. He just so happens to have been a TV producer later on in life and produced all the body shaping fitness shows back in the 80s and early 90s. And I stay in contact with him on a regular basis.
And I think that's really cool that you have those mentors, especially ones that have withstand time. And as you talk about Abe, he was there when you were a gymnast and he currently still is there, and something that he's super passionate about, and have that continuous mentorship throughout life. I think that's super essential because not all of us really get that. Even if we're in a sport or not in a sport, whatever we do, we may not have a mentor that's consistently with us. And so that is
True.
something special that you are blessed to be able to have. And kind of as we kind of transition more into the university, and we'll kind of go back into other gymnastics topics. Can you talk about your college coaching journey and where it started to present day where you're at and how you got to each place?
Um, so you mean how I started college coaching?
Correct.
Okay, so there was a wonderful lady by the name of Barbara Tonnery who coached Yale. She actually had she was in need of an assistant coach. So Barbara would come by the gym over Catch Gymnastics, which is, a town over. And she would ask, oh, Byron, I could probably use some help. Do you know anybody that would help? Well, Barbara, I'll look around, I'll ask. But she would show up like for a week straight and just chew my ear off about helping. So now I'm thinking, well, she's an icon of the sport itself, very close friends with Abe Grossfeld and Miro Grossfeld, Barbara and Don Tonnery. And so I said, well, let me see what I can do. I'll change my schedule. Then I became the assistant coach for Yale's women's gymnastics. I was there only to help in the beginning, but then that turned into, knowing me, it turned into, okay, well, wait a minute. We can be really good if we spend more time working in, area A. Let's clean up our bars. Let's get stronger. And so I was really passionate about helping the team. That was my first stint. So I only did it for a year. And then I crossed over and I helped Abe with the men's program for about 3 years. So during that 3-year period when I helped Abe, and I was still running my gym school, the university announced that they're going to drop the men's program. And then at the same time, the women's coach decided that she was going to retire. So I just knew that I was next in line to get the job. Well, I didn't. And they hired someone else for the position. And at the same time, the athletic director from University of Bridgeport found out that I was available, and he kept calling me, hey, you want to come down and help out? I'm like, that's just way too far. It's about an hour's drive. I'm like, there's no way. I said, well, let me come down. I'll meet with you, talk to him, talk to the athletes, saw the situation. It was pretty bad, but the athletes made a concerted effort to work hard. They says, well, if you work hard, then I'll come. Changed my schedule, $7,000 a year stipend to be the head coach. Did the program. A year later, I got the bug, and you know what? We can really be good if we work hard. And every recruit, my first recruiting class that I had, Southern Connecticut was the host of the national championship. We won the national championship that year with that freshman class, and I took great pleasure going to the athletic director at Southern and go, it should have been you, which was me winning. And then we won five more after that, and then so many conference championships in a row. And with each championship that we won every year, um, our goal was to beat last year's team. And then we put those athletes in front of the best competition. We've competed against Florida, and we've beaten Maryland, and we've beaten New Hampshire, and George Washington, and Arizona. So we went on the road to UCLA. We competed in Nebraska, in their invitationals, Arkansas. I mean, I'm just naming a few, but the goal was to take those athletes and put them in front of like the best competition. So then that became my motivation. Okay, every year, if we all get 20 hours a week, then who's going to make the most of those 20 hours? Now, however, some of those schools had, former elite athletes, some really good talent. We got to college and we got better. So using the model of which I've had, which was learning as much as you can year to year, that's what I instilled in those athletes, which made it a lot of fun. So I'm always looking for a challenge. As a matter of fact, when I did coach the University of Bridgeport at the time, I was the head coach for a high school program where we won 3 consecutive championships, 3 regional championships, two regional championships. And I was also coaching Yale because Barbara needed help. So I'm coaching club, coaching Bridgeport, coaching Yale, and at the high school. A lot of people saw that as too much work. I was having fun, man. I was literally in 5 or 6 gymnastics competitions a week, during the week, on the weekend. So, thanks to my family and their sort of support sort of lent to that, you go, Dad. At the same time, trying to coach my kids in various sports as well. So I'm always hyped up and ready to go.
Wow. It seems like you either have a clone or you just have a superpower where you're able to have the energy, almost like the Energizer Bunny, and be in multiple places at once, because for people, it may seem like, wow, how could you do all that, right? Because just the normal life of a gymnastics coach, if you're a club coach or even just a college coach, it seems like it's a lot and you might be away from your family, which it was nice for you to have that support from your family. And we had talked about.
Yeah, and I took them with me. I go to meets, they come to meets. Everywhere I went, that's where they were. I was in a club meet when I had club meets and my kids were born. I had them in the backpack, and I'm coaching, and they're in the back. I take it off, feed them, and I'm at the college. And if in fact, when I was at the University of Bridgeport, I had playpens set up. I had the freaking goldfish in this hand, the dog over here, and the TVs and cassettes. It was just, we had a lot of fun. They saw it as a lot of fun also, traveling and staying at hotels and, eating out and stuff like that. So it was a lot of fun for my kids too.
I'm glad that it was worth it. Now, being at Southern Connecticut as an athlete, as well as now being a coach there and having some time also coaching both men's and women's there, can you talk about what makes Southern Connecticut State University special and unique? And then before you kind of answer that, can you also tell us exactly where you guys are located?
Well, we're located in New Haven, Connecticut. And within New Haven, Connecticut, we have about 5 different universities. We have, Yale University, Southern, University of New Haven, Quinnipiac, another university called Albertus Magnus, and then there's a community college. So it's somewhat of a college town. And there's lots to do. There's lots of cultural events to go to. Lots of diversity here in the city of New Haven, and we're only about 75 miles out of New York City. So we're in an area where there's lots to do. So that is a lot of fun. Definitely a lot of fun.
And what is like things to do in, like, if I'm going to come to Southern Connecticut, what are things I could look forward to doing, either on campus or even just in New Haven?
Well, I mean, there's museums, there's lots of culture here. But when I recruit athletes to come to Southern, my very first question to them after getting to know them is, how good do you want to be? and the kids tease me about that now. Oh, that's Byron. How good do you want to be? And based on that, I take their plan. We plan together. We formulate a plan so that we can help them achieve those goals. So we often say that, you're coming here. You're going to get two education. Actually, you're going to get three educations. Those three educations are not necessarily in this order. Is that obviously you're going to get an education in school. You're going to get a gymnastics education, and third, you're going to get a street education. We're going to teach you how to care for yourself, outside of these walls, outside of the classroom. So we're giving all of those people that come into our program a part of us because they were just like us. Because I don't have any high level recruits. I have a lot of kids with potential. So it's easy to coach kids with potential because they want it more. And I don't have to police them so much as, well, more so than guide them. So when you come to Southern, you're going to get a hefty dose of Byron Knox, then that philosophy. And that's, I'm going to mirror you. Always stay 2 or 3 steps ahead of the athletes. That was the success that we've had in the past with other universities. And the potential that we have here is somewhat endless. So as soon as I think my administration gets on board or gets behind me, we're going to really take off.
And academically, what are the degrees that a lot of student athletes or even just students come and pursue? Or really, what are ones that are significant in the workplace that come out of SCSU?
Well, we have a tremendous health science program and a very good nursing program. And I say those two because we just built a brand new health science building, which is state of the art. And just most recently, we built a brand new school of business, a new facility. So between those two, we get lots of kids coming into the university that want to pursue a field in the medical field or the business field. We also have a very good comprehensive art program. As a matter of fact, one of the world's best artists by the name of Chaz Guest, who was a gymnast here, was my roommate, self-taught artist. We had no idea that he had the talent. I don't think he knew at the time. But just doodling and drawing. Before you know it, he's in Paris, he's in New York, he's doing paintings for Obama, for Oprah Winfrey. I mean, he's just a phenomenal athlete. I'd like to tell everybody I sort of helped guide his career because we were roommates. I fed him every now and then, helped nurture his talent.
That's funny. And are you guys a Division I school, Division II, or Division III school?
Well, we're a Division II university, but back then, back in the 70s, the school was able to deem a team Division I, and gymnastics took on that role back in 77. So we were a non-scholarship funded school, and here we are competing against the Oklahomas and the Arizonas of the world. So we took a lot of pride in having the best coach. At least we feel we had. We know we had.
Yeah, and it being a public university, what is the tuition like for a student who wants to come to the university or a student athlete that may not be on scholarship?
Well, I can tell you right now, and I remember what it used to be when I was here. It was like 800, $475 a semester, something like that. But now it's upwards of, I believe it's closer to 42,000 to attend the university. And one of the neat things that we have here at Southern, we do have an in-state model, but they're expanding that in-state model to other surrounding states. There's the New England area, there's New Jersey, and just recently we're sharing that in-state model with the state of Pennsylvania. So as the school grows, we're trying to attract more and more students regionally into the university, and then that helps us athletically as well. So in some cases, it would cost the same to go to an in-state school. Let's say if you're from Pennsylvania, than Connecticut. And then, that caveat would be gymnastics, and the gymnastics is their passion.
Yeah.
So,
And I know some universities, they don't offer any academic money. And you had just mentioned the kind of the surrounding states having an in-state. At Southern, do you guys have, like, if I'm from Minnesota and I'm not a close enough um, state to be able to get that in-state tuition, does Southern offer academic scholarships, or are they only need-based
um,
type
both,
of needs?
both need-based and academic money as well. So the school's been really good about trying to recruit and retain students that want to be a part of the university. And then we have some athletic money that we do add on to that as well. So when I recruit, I'm technically almost serving the role as a general manager. Let's see what you qualify for. Let's see how much academic money you can get, how we can offset that with some athletic money, and then other various scholarships. So, with a large team such as that I have, we try to spread the wealth. Those kids that are doing, making our lineups, that are walk-on athletes, we definitely tend to take care of those athletes and give them athletic aid. And kids that do exceptionally well in the classroom, we do the same things for those kids too. So it's just a combination of the academic aid, the at need, and athletic.
I think that's really good to know, especially for people who want to pursue your university. So they have an idea of full compass, wherever their strengths are, what they could possibly look at getting I don't know if return is really the right word, but as they kind of dive in the financial pieces of going to a university, at least they can know, all right, I'm great academically. And so these universities offer academic scholarships, or I puts me in positions to get grants and stuff like that. So then if I want to continue pursuing my athletic career, I'm able to do that without breaking the bank or putting myself in position where I have a lot of debt once I finish school. And go ahead.
And I think that's important. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. And it's a team's decision. Kids that want to go, athletes that want to go, yeah, I want to go. Oh, I love Coach Knox's message, but can you afford to do that? So I make it a point to speaking not only to the athletes, but I speak to the parents. I even speak to the club coaches. I want as much information as I can to help develop this person's goals to become, a top student slash, top level gymnast. So it takes a lot. And, my staff and I, we go all out in trying to make ourselves available to the parents and club coaches as well, because we know it's not just a one person decision. If that were the case, then, we'd probably have some of the top athletes here as well.
Yeah. And can you dive into how big the campus is in regards to the enrollment for students, but also for student athletes?
We have about 600. I take that back. We have about a little over, close to the 600 student athletes. And our enrollment, I don't know the exact amount, but I think it's closer to 7,000. And I could be wrong. My focus is, generally on, the sport itself. And, I have assistant coaches that deal with a lot of that stuff. But I would say that we have a pretty decent enrollment in the school. Small campus, nothing big. You literally can walk across the street, to the dorms. Cars not necessary, but lots of people do have cars. We have quite a few commuters also on campus, enrolled in the school. But I would say the student athletes are the ones that are really most invested in the campus because they spend the most amount of time here, either preseason, during season, postseason.
Makes sense.
So
It makes sense. And you had mentioned also a lot of your focus is on the sport itself. Can you kind of dive into your staff, talk about who they are, as well as everyone's role and what they bring to the program?
I have a staff of actually four, counting our team manager. I have an assistant coach by the name of Bella, and she's a former student here, former athlete. She works now as a nurse in the medical field. So she's a part-time coach. So she comes in and, her value is to young women. Her value is to the academic side. Her value is to making sure that our team members are on point in class as well. So, having a high team's GPA is just as important as team individual records or team event records. So she's very valuable to the program. The other coach is Jay Villegas. He's the gentleman we were in high school together doing gymnastics. We also were in college here at Southern as alumni doing gymnastics. He coached with me briefly at the University of Bridgeport. I appointed him as my TOPS coordinator for Region 6 at the time. He was at Brown University for a little bit, sharing all of the knowledge that he learned from me at Southern to get those guys good. I just had to say that for the record, Jay. You know how those kids got good. And now he's here at Southern Connecticut as a former alumni and has a vested interest in watching the program grow. He drives an hour and a half from Rhode Island, 3-4 times a week to come down here and help coach the team because he sees the potential in the program as well.
And you had mentioned potential a few times. What are you guys cooking up and what does the future hold, especially if you have the backing of the administration and have the backing of the, what's the word? The athletic department at Southern. Where could you guys get to and what could you guys become?
Okay, so I'm going to use the University of Bridgeport as a reference point. When I started there, we had 2 balance beams, 1 set of bars, not a lot of equipment. We pretty much was in the hood. Weren't going to get anybody to come down to Bridgeport. And I convinced the athletic director and the president at the private university at the time, if we build a facility, I can promise you I can get the athletes in and we can be successful. Well, 6 championships, 3 second places, 1 third place over a decade's period said a lot about what we had built back then. So using that model and sort of changing that model here for Southern, it's a bigger university. It's easier to recruit here. The only difference is we just didn't have the tools. I put together a 5-year plan of action when I first came here to the athletic department. Unfortunately, we're going on our 5th athletic director since my 4-year tenure, meaning we had an athletic director, then an interim, then a new athletic director, then an interim. Now we get another guy coming in from Jackson State who was part of the Coach Prime's administration. So we're excited about having him come. We have a new president that's excited about the growth of the entire university. And I think that with these people in place, I think that I have a better opportunity of selling my vision for not just gymnastics, but the community in itself. The gymnastics part is the easy part. I can do the gymnastics part. That's easy. And the winning part will happen once we have everything in place. So once I get the tools, I know that I'm going to be able to have an even more successful program. Right now, Southern is qualified for nationals for the first time in pretty much 2 decades. And we're doing that, pretty much without all the things that we need. I've invested in this program closer to $15,000 worth of equipment personally. because those are the things that we need. Once we get on track, once again, with having creating a safe training environment or better training environment, then I think that that's going to attract even more kids. I have a model of having my model was to have 75 kids involved in gymnastics. Now, everybody thought that was, unheard of, sort of crazy. It's a crazy thought if you're a gymnastics coach. But here was my philosophy. And I actually shared this with Chris Waller at the time, UCLA coach. He thought it was a brilliant idea, but sort of crazy in some ways. And that was, we're going to have a large competitive team of close to 30 athletes. We're going to develop a club team. We're going to also have a intramural gymnastics program, all within the university. So having that plan in place, I'm still yet to initiate it. So that's why back in 2020, I recruited 23 athletes. Actually, 2023, 23 athletes. No, I take that back. It was a year after COVID, 2021. I wanted to recruit 21 athletes, being symbolic of 2021. I sort of went over that. There are two other athletes that wanted to be here. I wanted to stick to the 2021 model. I made an effort to speak to their parents to let them know, this is not going to work. We're over our limit. But those parents convinced me that their daughters were like worthy of, being a gymnast at Southern. I brought them in. They were like the two best athletes that we had. So, thank goodness I did speak to those parents. And we were able to do that. So that's where my passion is. Getting the university behind me, which I'm real confident of the new people that are coming in. We're going to get this thing done. We're definitely going to get it done.
And what are some pillars that you have for your program that are things that kind of give it its identity, that the athletes abide by, that the coaching staff abides by?
Well, that is family first, education, your gymnastics, and then if you can fit stuff in after that, fine. We have 24 hours within the day. Try to get as much as you can done within those 24 hours. And I try to use that example with, the sort of jobs that I have outside of the university here. I do lots of stuff in the community. I help out other gym schools. I'm a director of a YMCA program. I still have more time on the clock. I still feel like I can do more. I'd like to start a gymnastics program here at the university for community kids. We got tons of schools that are nearby. Gymnastics is going to be huge next year. It's the Olympics. We got Simone Biles. We got I call it Simone Biles and the Supremes. This is the first time in so many years we have, Black athletes that are a part of the top echelon of the sport. Kids identify with that. And all kids. I work with kids that aren't Black, and they want to be like Simone. Everybody wants to be like Simone. Everybody wants to be like Jordan. I'm that guy in the middle. Yeah, you can be, because I was on the other side. Yeah, you can be like Mary Lou Retton. Yeah, you can be like Kim Zimesco. Of course you can. Here's how. So using those tools, not only am I building the sport, I'm trying to mentor young athletes, young women in particular, because they need it most. I have 4 daughters, so that's somewhat of my motivation as well.
And what are some things that you would tell the newer or younger generation in coaching? What are some advice that you have for them based off of all the years that you've been around the sport of gymnastics?
Well, one of the things I try to tell them is let's create some goals. Let's set some goals. And within those goals, there'll be short-term, long-term goals. And they don't always have to be gymnastics, but gymnastics will be that bridge on the academic side. An example would be, I ask the kids just about every day, even the little kids, how was school today? Did you learn anything today? Well, I don't know. And then my answer would be, well, you've been in there for 7 hours. You've been in there all day. You didn't learn anything. Tell me one thing. Did you have an exam? So I go around the room asking the kids about, their grades. And they may say, well, I got an 80 on whatever test, like an 80. That's like an 8.0 in gymnastics. Are you okay with that? What about a 9.7, a 90, a 100? You can get a 10. So I try to mirror what they do in school with the sport with no pressure, but just get them to think, okay, wait a minute. All right. Now, maybe I need to expect a little bit more from myself.
No, I think that's good. And one topic you and I had talked about this on the phone is right now, and this may not be impacting gymnastics as much, at least not as a whole. Probably some of the bigger schools and the higher ranked programs. But can you kind of talk about the relationship between NIL and also transfer and your opinion on both?
Well, I can only give you my opinion because, before all of that, athletes were finding it hard to even get a meal because of the restrictions of the NCAA. Back then, if you got paid, you were deemed a professional athlete, and that would negate any sort of scholarship opportunities. So now it's a little bit different. If you know anything about football and basketball, you see how much money that these universities are making, and the athletes aren't making much. It's a shame that they can't even get extra money for a meal. It doesn't impact us so much because we don't have any huge endorsements. We don't have a football team that's making millions of dollars. We're not a part of a conference that's disseminating hundreds of thousands of dollars to each member. We're just, we're doing it for the love of the sport, and we want to try to keep this thing, operational. So NLIs, I don't know a whole lot. I do know that kids are making money in NLIs. More power to them. I think that they would have to be registered with the NCAA, which I do believe that that's a requirement. But I couldn't tell you a whole lot about NLIs other than, some are making money, others aren't making money. And as far as what was the other question? Sorry, there was a two-part question. It was the NLI and
Yeah, NIL and transfer.
NIL and then the transfer. Well, within the transfer portal, that's sort of fair. You think about, in the past, you'd have to get permission to transfer, and then you'd have to sit out a year. That would only hurt the athlete. But coaches can do it. I can transfer and go to a new school with, I can create a problem at a school and then go to a new school and start over again. I think with the transfer portal, it opens up the door for the athletes. Some coaches don't like it because they're on the wrong end of it. But the coaches that do receive high level kids, well, they can take advantage of that. I think the 20-hour rule is fair. Do your work. Hell, I'd like to think that I can take my team and beat your team, and I can take your team and beat my team. It's all 20 hours.
And what are some exactly? And what are some like final remarks that you have as we kind of wrap up this episode for the listeners and the viewers to really get out of this, or even just anything, any piece of wisdom that you may want to leave with them?
I would say if you're a recruit, ask questions. Don't be on the receiving end all the time. Ask questions. What's your program like? Am I going to get better when I get in there? What's your expectation of me? Are you going to help? If I had a problem outside outside of gymnastics, what are my resources? So a lot of times coaches want to separate the athlete from the parent in that, okay, now you're in college, I don't want to have to deal with your parents. That's not always the case. I know with me, I want to know more. The parent and the coach is that information to help me help guide this athlete. So I would say ask questions, make yourself accountable, always communicate. When you come to college, you are in a new environment. You have no one to tell you when to come and go, when to wake up, what to eat. You got new teammates. You go from club gymnastics to college, which is team. Club is you go to the candy cane invite. If you want to scratch bars, you scratch bars, a beam, whatever. You can now get to nationals on one event. I mean, it's a different dynamic. Everybody gets a medal. Well, when you get to college, we can only compete 6, maybe 7. So, understanding the dynamics of sport, asking questions, go visit the universities, but make a commitment to yourself first. You, then the school. Find out if, in fact, you're being recruited for the help or you're going there to be helped. Coaches change their mind. I mean, it happens.
Yeah.
And I've seen a lot of it. I was on the other end as a club coach when Val from UCLA and Jay Clark when he was at Georgia, they came into my gym recruiting athletes, and those guys are still around. So that says a lot about how old I am, but I'm still in it, from a grassroots program.
Well, I appreciate you being on the podcast today and talking
Sure.
about your experience and also your university currently at Southern Connecticut, both as an athlete, but also as a coach. And thank you for sharing your wisdom and insight, not only with coaches, but also with student athletes on how to approach their own recruitment and how to make it their own and make it significant and think about themselves and try to position them in the proper position. Well, thank you. Remember to subscribe, to share, to leave a comment, and to like. I'll see you guys on this next episode.